Hello again, everyone, and welcome to week 7, English 1510. Just a quick reminder on some of this stuff. You got majority of those things all posted up. I did get the couple of messages where now the audio didn't sound like it was underwater, but there were breaks in the audio. It was only a few students, so I'm assuming the rest of them are posting just fine, and everything of that should be sorted out today and tomorrow. As far as I know, I've already passed this information along to some others to make sure that this is being run through. I'm not getting any error messages this time, so it looks like it's all going through. So those might just be individual things, hopefully. But on that, I should have no issue this week on the rhetorical analysis summary outline, giving people feedback while they're working on their final draft. Should certainly have those by the time you're finalizing those this week, and everything else on the next couple of days for any other feedback files that were either posted and retracted or posted without audio on those things should be addressed. I should say, I didn't want to have a misunderstanding. Not every one of the files will have an audio. It will say see feedback in audio either in your D2L Dropbox, or it'll say it on the document itself. I'll have a comment that tells you there, and you'll be able to see whether or not there's audio. If I didn't say see feedback and audio, then the audio, I have some of you who, you know who you are. Since the start of term, there's been no issue getting stuff back to you almost immediately, because it's been from start to finish. You've done everything correctly and really had no cause for much redress on any of those things. So for those ones, there's been no issue on those, and I haven't been doing audio files, and I wouldn't do that on people who have very few errors on those. Having said that, this week on rhetorical analysis, I gave one more buffer day. Students were asking for extensions and things on this draft. That's just fine. Remember, you're putting the draft into the best of your framing of ideas and in those things, and then we're working on the peer review this week, and then getting feedback, pairing that with feedback on the summary outline that I post before you're writing your final one. The final draft, this is the first week you'll have an overlap. You'll have, coming up this weekend, you'll have the final draft for rhetorical analysis and the argumentation, summary, and working thesis. The piece on the final draft on rhetorical analysis, I think that for everyone, if you haven't done an ASC tutoring session yet, remember up here under your student services, the Academic Support Center, everyone's required to have one for the semester, and I give extra credit for even that one, but you can do as many as you need to, and I've recommended for over half students now that it's more than one that I think you need. And remember, that's during a weekly drafting at weekly basis on drafting stages. I definitely think now with the rhetorical analysis final draft to be a good time to apply it if you hadn't done so already. I got about a 50-50 split on this. I got some students who've been using it and following recommendations and just using it on their own. I have other students who really haven't done much in that area, and it's showing as a bit of a detriment. You need to make sure that if you need to, you're getting an extra set of eyes during your proofreading revision stage. So now would be a good time to start, and I think most students, not everyone, but most students could use at least the 2, rhetorical analysis drafting stage into final, and then final on argumentation. Maybe, for some of you, I've recommended 2 through that stage, rough and final draft stage, so it'd be 3 in total for some of you. But, if no one's restricting you, if you feel you need that anyways, and I didn't make that extensive of a recommendation. Okay, so the things, rhetorical analysis rough draft this evening, and then this week you'll be working on the finalization of that draft. You'll be working on the summary outline, summary and working thesis template for argumentation. You're picking a topic in this Dropbox and you're finalizing that piece. First, I want to take you guys through quickly a review here on this rhetorical analysis posting and review for the peer review drafting stage. Remember that you're posting these up by this evening. Students must start a thread and post theirs by 11:30, and then you must also review at least one classmate by 11:30 this week. I'm going to say across the board with the work, we're doing pretty good in most of my sections. In most of my sections, I don't think I have a full 25 in any section. I don't know that any of them started full. I think we have 23, 24 in each section rather than the 25. But of those, 17, 18, 19 students right around that area are submitting everything correctly and on time, and then a few others are struggling to, you're messaging me about extensions and things like that. That's okay. We're dealing with that on a case-by-case basis, and most of the time we've had good documentable circumstances that I can justify an extension for a day or two at the least. I'm not really a big proponent of restricting students on anything like that, but the main thing is to know that you're working towards getting them in. But in each class, I do have a few students who are handing in pretty much nothing. Didn't get a diagnostic, and then didn't get a memoir summary outline, maybe a draft in that stage, while not having done the other components, and then no final draft, and then nothing in rhetorical analysis so far. Not much interaction on the D2L platform homepage. I have a few students this semester who have not even showed up for week 1. I mean, you've been in the class, logged in, done some work, but I haven't heard anything from you in terms of the other content. So need to make sure that you guys are addressing those. It's an automatic failed grade if I just am not hearing from a student. They're not posting anything. But in keeping with that, this peer review is very important for this rhetorical analysis, and it's important to do both your posting and then putting in a review of a classmate's. In reviewing these 7 different categories, the first one having a few different parts to it, you are both helping a classmate make sure they're following directions on this, and also helping yourself recognize whether or not you have these primary details. So in the intro, in that general to specific intro, does it open up with a general category? Explain the type of commercial this is, right? If you're analyzing a commercial for a pop, some of you have chosen these Coke and Pepsi commercials. If you're doing that, then you're posting up a general statement. There are a number of different soda pop or carbonated beverage commercials. For instance, Pepsi last year came out with such and such an ad that was very popular. That would cover both A and B, right? Giving your general statement followed by a specific one. And if you said Pepsi here for this, that would be a clear indication to me that this is probably going to be Coca-Cola or a Sprite or something that you're actually analyzing. So it would be, there are a number of different pop commercials that come out every year. For instance, Pepsi had a very popular one last year that covered this, this, and this, or stated this. Similarly, Coca-Cola made a commercial for Super Bowl last year that said and did the following for this reason. And that would be your specific, giving what your commercial's about, making sure that you're giving that your topic section content of the who made it and why. And does it end in a thesis statement? Does the thesis statement actually explicitly state the rhetorical devices that were used in the ad? These should be actual devices like imagery, music, score, celebrity person, spokesperson, famous athlete, humor, voiceover narration, captions, etc. This is the mistake that students make from not paying attention. These things that are stated here are examples of rhetorical devices which you're analyzing. The rhetorical devices are not logos, ethos, and pathos. This is an issue that students stumble with at the start of this oftentimes. Logos, ethos, and pathos are rhetorical concepts. They refer to the types of appeals devices make, like logical appeals, appeals to emotions, appeals by association or familiarity. This would be the ethos appeal. By association or familiarity, you just think about if they use an expert in some area, even if that's a celebrity or famous athlete, you have an expert in that area that they're making an ethos appeal because you recognize them and you have a level of trust just by the type of relationship they have with the public. Okay, if it's an endearing comedian, there's an appeal there in terms of an ethos because you know who they are, they're familiar. They might also have an emotional appeal because they're funny. It's possible to have more than one appeal per device, right? So make sure those things are clear. You're checking for one versus the other. Does each body paragraph begin with an explicit topic sentence? And there's an example of one right here. The first and most obvious rhetorical device employed in the commercial ad was imagery. If that's the case, that whole entire body paragraph should be explaining the individual images that made up the imagery and what the intended appeals were. Does each body paragraph adequately explain the examples of the rhetorical device throughout the ad? Does the analysis of each device explain the intended appeal of the rhetorical device use? Make sure you're following that. Does the overall analysis of each rhetorical device also explain who the intended audience was? This doesn't have to be throughout the entire paragraph, but at least at the end you should state who the beginning or end, you state who the intended audience was, right? As long as it's clear to your reader that you understood it. And then a conclusion. Does the conclusion state whether or not the ad was effective? Meaning, did you feel like the rhetorical devices used were effective in delivering their intended message to the intended audience? If they're trying to sell tennis shoes to teenage kids, did they do a good job at appealing to teenage kids with those wheelie commercials or whatever it is that they might have had, right? If you were the teenage kid, were you enthralled enough to want to buy that product? Now, make sure that with these, you're given a thorough overview on them. You're not skipping any of the steps here because it helps enormously for classmates to get reviews on these. With the other piece for this week, you're going into the overlap, you finishing that out in those reviews, and then finalizing rhetorical analysis final drafts. Then also we have this argumentation. I think this will be the one and only time you actually have an overlap in submission on these. So you have here, all you have to do is select a topic. I have a bunch of suggestions down here. There are a bunch of different ways you can frame these, trying to think about there being issues that are discussed that are either wedge issues or very real problematic things that need to be addressed and sorted out. In either event, the main thing here is that I want you arguing to solve a problem. So if you're talking about obesity being an issue, then what are the best ways to address obesity? I don't want you flipping this on its head and saying obesity is not an issue, okay? I don't need to get into back and forth with students about their ideology and the way they feel about someone who's obese. This is a health crisis issue that's been established by the medical community at large, including all major medical associations and your different health organizations throughout the country that inform and share their content and views with your hospitals, treatment facilities, everything else. But if you're going to do this and say that obesity is a crisis, the best ways to address obesity in the United States are, and list 3 things in your thesis statement. So those can be topics of body paragraphs, right? We're also going to be dealing with opposition, but for right now, all you're doing is downloading this, reading through what's required on this page, and you're going to fill this document out. It's essentially a general to specific intro paragraph if you get all this right. If you fill these in correctly with full statements, that what is the category this would fit into, right? So if you pick obesity, that would be the obesity is a public health crisis issue. That would be the category, right? Real world example, for instance, it's been noted that obesity is becoming an issue at younger ages. Name some of the things you know. You don't have to do a bunch of research here at the outset, but enough to understand your topic. Current social relevance, why should people care, and then relevant details that you feel at least that you already know. Then a thesis statement that at least names 3 specific categories here. Once that's completed, you're submitting that. I will be putting reviews on these. On the argumentation pieces, there shouldn't be any issue with students completing all of this and me being able to give you some overview feedback on each one of these components as we go through argumentation, at least up until we get into drafting. The summary and then the work cited and primary points of support in the weeks ahead, those should be no issue for me to review and have a quick turnaround response because they're quite short. The main thing here is to remember you are now doing peer-reviewed research and peer-reviewed only. You're going through the library link here so that you can go down here, type your topic in. Yeah, obesity crisis. we do a search on this, and you would select for peer review on the side.